What do you want to highlight from this bill? What should people know about what the government's doing?
Well, the government of Saskatchewan is committed to providing carbon tax fairness for families in Saskatchewan by removing the carbon tax charge on SaskEnergy bills come January 1st. That'll save the average family in Saskatchewan about $400 a year. What we wanted to do is ensure that we are transferring the onus from that portion of the Federal Greenhouse Gas and Pricing Pollution Act from SaskEnergy as the entity to the government, because ultimately it will be the government's decision with respect to when and how to collect and when and how to remit or not to remit. That will not be a decision of SaskEnergy. And so this provides legal indemnification for officers, board members past and present, as well as other agents that work for SaskEnergy that in the event that the government does make the decision to ultimately not remit, that this will not be borne by officials or board members at SaskEnergy. This will be a government decision, and that any potential consequences will not be borne by them. They will be borne by me as minister.
What are the consequences? Like, what do you think is going to result in this?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, certainly what we hope the result is that the federal government will see fit to remove the carbon tax from all forms of heating fuel in Canada. In Saskatchewan, that would be primarily natural gas. And so, you know, our hope is that the federal government will commit to that and provide fairness for all Canadians, including residents in Saskatchewan. There are legal remedies within the Federal Act that can include fine or prosecution, including imprisonment. And so what this bill attempts to do is to move the onus for making the decision with respect to that portion of the Greenhouse Gas and Pricing Pollution Act from SaskEnergy as an entity and their officers, officials, board members, agents, other employees, and move that to me as minister. Ultimately, this will be a government decision, and so you know, I can't say what will happen in the event that the government doesn't provide that fairness, but what we're going to do is provide that fairness in the meantime and remove the carbon tax charge from SaskEnergy bills beginning January 1st.
As enabling legislation, this is a little bit different than I think I've seen in the past anyway. Like, will there be, first of all, another bill that will try to move it forward so that you don't have to pay it all, or is this what you're doing in essence, if I understand it, is moving the responsibility for the consequences from anyone else to you?
That's correct.
Which I get, but do you need separate legislation to not?
No, we wouldn't. I believe that this act is sufficient for what we're trying to do. First and foremost, remove the decision to not remit the carbon tax if we get to that position, if we get to the point where we need to make that decision, that decision and the potential consequences would be removed from SaskEnergy and placed to me as the minister, and provide, I think provide assurances to the officers, the board members, the employees of SaskEnergy that we will not expect and we will not, frankly, tolerate consequences being placed on them or borne by them that I'm not willing to bear myself. And so this provides for essentially that direction that we're shifting the registration under the act that's required from SaskEnergy to the government, but providing as well indemnification for anybody involved at SaskEnergy in the event that the federal government decides to move forward.
Can you help me with layman language so I can explain it better to people that, believe it or not, understand it even less than I do? But what I'm thinking you're doing is moving all the exposure that might have been elsewhere to you in your office.
That's correct. Yeah.
Is there any concern, like, is the filing responsibility with you, or does it go all the way to the premier?
No, it's in the act. It's the minister. I'm responsible. Yeah.
So, SaskEnergy is not going to remit the carbon tax. Is there a way the federal government will still keep tabs on what should be remitted? Like, what does that look like?
Yes, so I mean, they will. They have been collecting the remittance that SaskEnergy has been providing and will continue to provide until we make a decision whether or not to further remit into the future. And so the carbon tax will be collected in November and in December and would be remitted by SaskEnergy. In the event that we, assuming the bill passes in the House, in the event that we do move forward with putting the act enacting it, basically what it will do is all of the day-to-day operations of SaskEnergy and the people that are responsible for managing the company will remain with SaskEnergy. What we're saying is that this particular section of the federal act, the decision to abide or not abide by that particular section will no longer be SaskEnergy's to make. It will be moved to the government, to me as minister. And so at that point, we would then have to make the decision whether or not we would further remit the carbon tax. So this in and of itself doesn't stop the remittance. It gives us the ability to make that decision if we are going to stop remitting in the future.
Have you explored the personal consequences for this? Like, because you are the one now being exposed.
I've retained legal counsel, personally, yes.
And what's your legal counsel telling you that you don't tell me?
I'm not going to disclose that.
You obviously feel strongly about this, if that's the step you're taking. I think when this was announced, there was some criticism of it being a stunt by the government or trying to send a message to the federal government, but obviously you're serious about
Yeah.
this. Can you speak to that? Seriously about this issue particularly?
Yeah, no, I would say first, when the Premier first made the announcement that we were going to go down this road to provide for the same carbon tax fairness as the Prime Minister had provided to people in Atlantic Canada, that we were serious about that, and I think when I last spoke to all of you about this, we were seriously considering what legal recourses that we would have in terms of legislation. The legislation is now before the House. This certainly is not a stunt. We take it very seriously. The whole of government takes this very seriously. I would just say that we're hopeful that that the federal government will further the carve-outs that they've provided to some Canadians. I think that there is certainly there was a significant amount of support, although not a majority, in the House of Commons in the last week or so, calling for fairness for all Canadians. We hope that even though that didn't pass, that would certainly send a signal to the federal government. And, I think there's even recent polling out this morning that indicates that the vast majority of Canadians feel that there should be relief for all residents in Canada when it comes to heating their homes, particularly at a time where affordability is top of mind for everybody and winter is upon us. So we're hopeful that the federal government will see fit to provide the same fairness to all residents in Canada, including here in Saskatchewan.
I have to ask about the counsel again. Have you retained personal legal counsel, or is the government obtained it on your behalf, or have you been used to the government on your behalf? Because as an employee of the government, you would be someone who was exposed. It would seem more logical to me that your employer, me, would be one who would foot the bill.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. So I have separate legal counsel than SaskEnergy or other entities within government, but we'll figure out the bill afterwards.
But
yeah.
it would be through your capacity
Yes,
as a minister
that's correct.
of the Crown, in which the Crown would
Yeah.
in fact pay for your...
I believe so.
Thank you.
I hope so.
Does this affect people beginning, do you look into that at all? Like, the federal government sends rebates based on some of the money that's collected. Is this affecting if you do choose not to remit this down there first?
It's a good question, but I think it's probably a better question for the federal government, because I don't think that there's, even though carbon tax won't be charged on home heating fuel in Atlantic Canada, understand that the rebate, particularly for rural residents in all of Canada, including Atlantic Canada, is actually increasing. And so it doesn't appear that a decision to remove the carbon tax for some Canadians on the way they heat their homes is going to affect their rebate. And so if that's the case in the rest of Canada, it should be the case here in Saskatchewan as well.
Have you thought more about where if the federal government says the provincial government owes them such and such amount of money, where that money will come from?
I mean, we've had some initial thoughts about, in the event that we are put in a position where we do have to remit, you know, what our message today and in the past has been is that we're not going to collect the carbon tax on SaskEnergy bills beginning January 1st. You know, if we get to that point, you know, we will have further discussions about where, in fact, those dollars would come from. But at this point, it's not going to be on SaskEnergy bills going forward.
Have you spoken with the federal ministry about this at all?
I haven't, but the Deputy Premier has spoken to the Deputy Prime Minister.
And what have those conversations been like?
Well, I think that to this point, all indications are that there weren't going to be any more carve-outs, but we're hopeful that that will change.
And I was just one sec. So, just like the government would be breaking the federal law by doing this if it goes forward. How significant is that for you?
Well, it's something that that I don't take lightly, and that the government doesn't take lightly. But we just think that the Prime Minister should do the right thing and provide carbon tax fairness for all Canadians.
Did you think about using an notwithstanding clause? Was that contemplated?
No.
Looking at the strategy.
I don't think it's applicable in this case. Yeah, that's my understanding. It wouldn't have been applicable. I think I think that came from previous when we were the carbon tax, the original carbon tax case that went to the Supreme Court. I think at that time it was decided that the notwithstanding clause wouldn't have been applicable. So
just one more for me. You thought this would be a wiser, quicker process, I assume, than re-entering a court process.
Yeah, that's right, but I don't think it precludes us from looking at other legal action outside of legislative action.
So something similar to the carbon tax case we saw 2 years ago?
Yeah. Yeah.
That you might restart because of this?
Yeah, or there are parts of the case that went to the Supreme Court that the Supreme Court justices decided not to weigh in on, and so we're looking at avenues of whether or not there's well, there's possibly, is my understanding.
This is the part of the act where it's repealed. Can you just explain how that will affect SaskEnergy? It talks about being able to hire employees and staff and that sort of thing. So what would that do to SaskEnergy by repealing that section?
I'm sorry?
Like in section 7.1 to 7.5, it deals with like SaskEnergy has the power to hire people.
Yes.
Etc.
Yeah.
What does that do if you repeal that? Like what happens to SaskEnergy in that case?
Nothing changes in terms of the day-to-day operations. All this bill does is take it provides indemnification for the list of officers, a list of directors, officers, that sort of thing. And it as well, it basically changes the registration under the Federal Act from SaskEnergy to the provincial government. And so really the day-to-day operations do not change. This is specific to that one section of the Federal Act.
When did you thought since one part of this act is a federal responsibility and out of provincial jurisdiction and can be connected to your hands, that the property of community, your hands will be respected by the federal government and still hold employees accountable?
That's a possibility. That'll be up to the federal government to decide essentially how they accept this legislation once it's passed.
Minister, have you ever had the opportunity to see the inside of a federal penitentiary, a ministerial tour or some such event like that?
I have not.
And your conversations with SaskEnergy about this, what have they been telling you? What has the board been telling you in the executive?
Well, I've had numerous discussions with folks over at SaskEnergy. I think that first and foremost, I think there is an understanding of the government's position and the ability for the shareholder to take that position. They have been very good to work with in terms of bringing us to this point where, we're in a position to be able to table the legislation. I think obviously nobody can predict how the federal government might respond to this action that we're taking today. And so, I think what we've tried to do is provide as much assurance as we can that we, because this is the government that will be making the decision in the event that we get to the point of not remitting the carbon tax, that it will be a government decision. And so we are trying to provide as much assurance to everybody at SaskEnergy that this is not on them, this will be on us in the event that there are consequences. But at the end of the day, they have a company that they still need to run, and so I expect that that's going to take place. We have a great crew workforce over at SaskEnergy, including a very strong board, and I am expecting that they will carry out their duties as they always have.
So what do you think God will do? Not what you want them to do, obviously that's evident by what you're doing, but what do you think they're going to do?
I'm still hopeful that they're going to change their mind on the carbon tax and provide relief to all Canadians.
And if they don't, there's consequences.
There are consequences, and we'll see.
What the total was again last year, most recent numbers for what?
174 million, I think, is the overall number. I think 2022, yeah. I'm sorry?
$30 per average bill payment.
Yeah, I think that would be the monthly. It's about 400 a year. Yeah, is what we're forecasting.
And just the fines that would have to be paid, would that come out of the ministry's office, or the government would pay those fines?
Yeah, I mean, it would be ultimately, it depends on, again, hypothetically, what route a prosecution would look like, which section under the federal act, whether it's 133 or 135, I think is the other penalty section, and they each have different provisions in terms of how much a fine can be. So, but yeah, we'd have to make the decision as a government how we would be paying for that.
Will SaskEnergy employees hypothetically face reprimands or other consequences if they choose not to follow this provision to try to collect?
Well, at the end of the day, it's ultimately up to the government to determine how to collect. That's not in the federal act, so SaskEnergy doesn't make that decision how to collect. We decided as a government, as the shareholder, that it would be collected through a rate rider on the bill, and so they are working through a process to see that not be on the bill come January 1st, which is I think a fairly straightforward change to the billing process. I think it would be, I just don't see a scenario where somebody at SaskEnergy would decide to remit the carbon tax going forward if the government decided that we weren't going to remit. So I don't see that playing out that way.
Just take a question. Are you one that's responsible because you're responsible for CIC as a holding company or because of SaskEnergy?
Both, yeah. Yeah.
And why is it the minister as opposed to the premier?
Well, because it's ministerial responsibility, so it falls under my authority and my ability as the minister.
So people who pay like energy bills, some are like on an averaging plan.
Yeah.
So it's the same every month. If this goes through, will that go down for those folks?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moving a little on the topic, what's your response to people calling for scrapping the gas tax?
Well, we certainly want to be able to provide affordability relief for the people of Saskatchewan. My understanding is that for the average citizen, this would provide a greater financial relief in terms of seeing a reduction in a removal of the carbon tax from their SaskEnergy bill. So we certainly think that this is one of the measures that we can take as a government, that the federal government should take for all Canadians to provide some affordability relief.
What about the calls to scrap the gas tax, provincial gas tax specifically?
Well, I think the gas tax plays an important function of reinvesting into highways, and I know certainly in my time as an MLA, if there's one thing that the people of Saskatchewan care about, it's lots of money going into highways. And so we can provide affordability relief, and I think that this is a better way and one that speaks to the fairness issue probably more than the gas tax.
So you're not considering scrapping it at this time?
No.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you.